And welcome back to our Misconceptions unit. We are going to talk about misconceptions about health and health news, medicine, medical news, and related topics. And these can be kind of complicated because sometimes it's a matter of discerning truth from fiction and kind of teasing apart, pulling apart the true bits from the false bits. Sometimes there's a bit of truth to some of these rumors or ideas, and sometimes they're completely false. And in addition, we have to talk about, okay, what kind of sources of information are we going to believe? And how do we get good information? We'll talk about that toward the end. Let me give you an example. I remember about the early 2000s here in Korea, there were protests against importing U.S. beef into Korea. I think for a while U.S. beef was restricted or banned, and then the Korean government back then started talking about opening up imports of U.S. beef. And this was at a time, it was after there was a mad cow disease scare in the U.S., a minor one. There have been a few cases in the U.S. of mad cow disease. If you don't know mad cow disease, it's a horrible disease. It's a degenerative brain disease. You can get it from eating a cow, nerve or brain tissue in beef from a cow that was infected. There's no cure. Some people died in England. There was a scare in England some years before that, in the UK and Europe actually, back in the early 1990s. And some people died, and there's no cure for it. It's relatively rare, but it is an awful disease. So there were a couple of cases of cows infected with this in the U.S. around, I think, the very early 2000s, early 90s. And U.S. beef was banned for a while in the Korean, as the Korean government was talking about allowing U.S. beef to be imported again. There were big protests in Korea against reimporting U.S. beef. And I think that the protests were kind of misguided, but not entirely. At that time, it seems like the U.S. had dealt with the problem, more or less. So the concern over mad cow disease was probably very exaggerated. However, I think that there were other legitimate reasons for opposing U.S. beef, or at least for restricting it at that time, especially. So if the protests had focused on that, I think they would have been more credible. So at that time, this was after the mad cow disease scare. Mad cow disease itself at that time was probably no longer a legitimate concern. But I think there were other issues that the protesters should have focused on. One, the U.S. beef industry is a huge, huge industry, and it dwarfs the Korean beef industry. For the sake of protecting the Korean beef industry, it makes total economic sense to protect Korean jobs, not by banning, but at least by limiting U.S. beef imports. That makes sense to me economically. Second, I happen to think that Korean and Australian beef taste a lot better than American beef. And I think there are two related reasons. One, the conditions by which cows are raised, especially in big commercial farms in the U.S., the conditions are horrible. The cows are treated badly, and I think that's a legitimate concern. And two, the cows are given a lot of drugs and hormones, hormone injections, and I think that's a legitimate health concern. If the protesters had focused on those issues instead of the mad cow disease, they would have had a better case. So that's an issue where there was some exaggeration, there were some unfounded fears, but there were legitimate reasons that could have been raised for restricting U.S. beef that the protesters should have focused on but didn't. And hence some health tests, I think one of my Korean students did, a paper on this or a project on this one time in one of my classes, and was pretty critical of the protests. And I think, well, yeah, if they focused on the legitimate issues, they would have had something. Anyway, moving on. I have sent you a course packet through the LMS. It is course packet I used for previous class at my previous job, and I've adapted to this class. There might still be mistakes, and there are going to be some things that are not quite relevant. We're not going to cover all of it. So I've sent you the PDF. I don't print it out. Maybe print out the relevant sections that we're doing during a particular week. Don't print out the whole thing. You don't need all of that. It's kind of intended for the whole course, a whole actual real live class, not a video class. So there's some stuff we just are not going to cover because of the online format this semester. There's some things that are going to change, especially the final project. The final project, as described in the course packet, is going to change. I kind of grayed out some things or X'd out some things that are not relevant, but I want to keep them in there for next year. So there's going to be some things that are not quite relevant for this semester. There are a few things we've already done from here previous handouts in the semester. And there are some things we're going to skip, some things we've already done, some things that we're going to actually use. For example, the unit on misconceptions we're going to use, maybe not all of it. Some of it we've already done. We've done pop psychology, for example, and stuff. There is an overview of the unit on page 31, and on page 32, here are some health items. I want you to discuss these. Are these claims true? These are common claims that have been raised in some health news reports that say a new study says this is good for you, or this is bad for you. Now, you've heard that kind of stuff, right? Maybe you're confused by it. You hear a friend or relative who's saying, here, take this is good for your brain, this is good for your heart. Do you believe in that? Okay, I've got some of these claims here. I will put these are on 2 slides, or they're both on page 32 in my booklet. Discuss these. Think about these. Discuss these with someone. Are these true? What do you think of these? Some of these are totally wrong. Some of these are based on a bit of truth, but really exaggerated. Some might be true. Which are true, which are false, and which are kind of exaggerated. I want you to discuss these for a while. So there's some here about coffee, popping knuckles. You like to pop your knuckles? I do. It's fun, you know. When I was young, my parents said, don't do it. It'll hurt your joints. It'll cause arthritis when you're older. Well, does it really do that? Drinking wine, watching TV, fat versus sugar. Some of these, I've actually heard these. Green tea can help you lose weight. Something can help you lose weight or is good for your brain. Are these true? Do you believe in these? Pause the video for a while and discuss these. And we're back. So the first one, is coffee bad for you? I remember must have been sometime in the 1990s, I think. It was all over the news. The study looked at heart attacks and coffee drinking. And supposedly people who drink a lot of coffee were more likely to have heart attacks. What do you think of that? Okay, the coffee and heart attack study, that was a big thing, and some people were scared, like, oh, I shouldn't drink coffee, or I should cut down. Well, the thing is, in that study, it reported a correlation, kind of a mathematical connection, between coffee, how much coffee some people drank, and then their likelihood of having a heart attack later. But was it a good study? It was reported a lot in the news media for a while, but was the study good? Well, they didn't really check for other factors that might affect their heart health. Think about it. If somebody drinks a lot of coffee and they have a heart attack, is the coffee the cause of the heart attack? Can you think of a better explanation? For example, think about this. What kind of people drink a lot of coffee? Think about it for a minute. Okay. Besides professors like me, I drink at least 3 or 4 cups a day. What kind of people drink a lot of coffee? People who work stressful jobs, people who are working maybe 40, 60 hours a week with stressful jobs. Besides drinking a lot of coffee, can you think of other factors in their lifestyle that contribute to heart attacks more likely? Yes, we can think of some. What are they? Yes, they don't exercise. They probably eat improperly. They probably eat a very unhealthy diet. So bad diet, lack of exercise, maybe a lack of sleep. They are sitting in their office all the time. And of course, they have a lot of stress. So stress, a very stressful lifestyle, stressful jobs, poor nutrition, no exercise. No wonder they have heart attacks. Goodness. So that was a poorly done study that didn't really consider the other factors. It simply reported a correlation. And I don't know if the study authors were claiming a causal connection that coffee caused this. They just reported a correlation. But do people in the news media who report this stuff, do they understand scientific papers? Do they understand how science works? No, they don't. They don't understand. A lot of general news media sites will report this. They'll have a link. They want you to click on it. It's called clickbait. So bait is kind of like what you use for fishing to catch fish, like a worm or something on your hook. Clickbait is an expression for like a web headline, and is worded in order to get you to click on it, because they want you to click on their website and see adverts. It's the adverts that pay their money. So it's about money. So a lot of commercial mass media companies, they'll be glad to report this. We talked about the Mozart effect. They reported the Mozart effect studies, but later did they come out and say, oh, remember last year we told you about the Mozart effect? Well, there have been several new studies that show there's nothing there. Sorry. No, they don't say that. It's not clickbaity. No. When this bad study came out about coffee and heart attacks, it was a poorly done study. People in news media they don't understand science. They didn't know how to look at the study and see problems in the study, or see that the study is only claiming or reporting a correlation, not a causation, not a cause. Correlation is not causation. It's important. And then later, if later studies showed no connection between coffee and heart attacks, did the news media report it? No, it's not cool. It's not clickbaity. Same thing with some older studies reporting coffee and bone problems. Badly done studies, there's no merit to it. So coffee is not necessarily bad for your health. Other things are. If you're not exercising or eating properly or sleeping properly, or if you have too much stress, of course you're going to have a heart attack. Number 2, coffee is good for your health. Is that true? Well, you know what? A lot of studies in the past couple of decades have shown benefits of moderate coffee drinking. Maybe not for everybody, but for most people. Less likelihood of certain diseases like diabetes, for example. Of course, it has short-term benefits for your brain function. We know that. Not for everybody, but for most people. There have been several studies, a number of studies actually, not just one, showing positive benefits of coffee. So an important thing to understand about how science works, science research, health research, medical research, is the importance of replication. One study does not ever prove anything in any field, especially in science or medicine or health or psychology. One study doesn't prove something. You need multiple studies. The first coffee study, coffee and heart attack study, it didn't look at other important factors. The Mozart effect study, the very first one that got so widely reported, it didn't consider other important factors. A lot of research starts out small. You have an idea that there might be a connection between two things. You start out with a small study of like 30 people. Why? The statistics work out pretty nicely that way. It's probably something you can do cheaply, because it takes a lot of money to do research. If you have positive results, then you and other scientists will do follow-up studies. You get bigger groups. You look at other factors. And it's only after a lot of repeated studies, replication studies. You could have had like something here with a small group, but it could have been just an unusual group. Or it could be some factor you failed to look at. So it was only after a number of studies have been done, looking at different factors, exploring different factors and causes, and finding some kind of a causal explanation. Why does X cause Y? Only then will the scientific community or the health community or medical community then agree, recognize, yes, this causes or leads to heart attacks, or this is good for your heart health, or this is good for your brain, or this is bad for your brain. It's only after a lot of research is built up that then the scientific community will come to an agreement, a consensus, that yes, this is a thing, this is true. Until then, it's not responsible for general news media, commercial news media companies to report the results of one little study as if it's true. That's wrong. So there's a problem with the way that this kind of stuff is reported in the general news media. And the problem then is the average person in the public gets confused. You're telling me that eating pickles is good for you? Well, 10 years ago you told me it was bad. And these people who are maybe not well educated, they tend to, because of this, they learn to distrust science or medicine or doctors just because of how stuff is misreported in the news media. And that's really unfortunate. Where do you go for news? We'll talk about that later. Let's look at some other examples. Is popping or cracking your knuckles, is it bad for your bones and joints? Nope. Anyway, can you do this? It's a little trick. Anyway, do it if you have like little kids, do it for the middle. They'll be really surprised. It's harmless. Well, if you do it way too much, I mean, if you do it constantly all the time, yeah, it's kind of a repetitive stress injury. That's not good. But just sometimes relieving like the muscle tension during this, sometimes it's harmless. It does not involve the bones at all. Most bones in the human body do not directly touch each other. The only bones in the body that directly touch each other are those 3 tiny little bones in your ear. These bones don't touch each other directly. In between there's joint tissue, and in the joint tissue there's a lubricating fluid, and in the lubricating fluid there are gas bubbles. Little gas bubbles arise. When I do this, it changes the fluid pressure, that gas bubble pops. So you're hearing gas bubbles popping inside your joints. That's what's making the noise. It's harmless. Totally harmless. There's no connection between that and arthritis. A few years ago, number 4, there was a study claiming that drinking red wine each day is good for the heart due to a particular antioxidant in the red wine. Is that true? Well, there have been a lot of studies over decades showing general health benefits of moderate, and I stress moderate health consumption of alcohol. Just like coffee. Yeah, coffee is good. Doesn't mean you should drink 10 cups a day like I do. Well, okay, I drink only 4. Yeah, moderate coffee consumption is good for most people. Not everyone, but most people. Moderate alcohol consumption, I mean, a few of you may have some problems with alcohol for health reasons or religious reasons, okay, fine. But for most people, moderate alcohol use is healthy for a number of reasons. A number of studies have shown health benefits of alcohol in general. But this particular benefit was really exaggerated in the news media. Particular antioxidant in red wine. Well, it's there, but it's in such small amounts that in order to get this particular antioxidant benefit, you would have to drink 3 bottles a day of red wine. That's a bit much, I think. Okay. And too much alcohol is not good for you. I hope you know that. So yeah, red wine is healthy, but not for this reason. Not for this particular antioxidant. It's there in such small amounts that it's not meaningful. Unless you are drinking 3 glasses a day, 3 bottles a day, in which case you probably need help. Number 5, watching TV too close or in a dark room is bad for your eyes. Again, not true. It may cause eye strain, eye soreness. Your eyes might get sore. In the same way that your eyes get sore from looking at the computer screen too much without blinking enough, your eyes get sore, but you rest your eyes and afterwards you'll be fine. As children, we were told, don't do this, it'll hurt your eyes, it'll make you nearsighted, and it's not true. It causes temporary eye strain, but it doesn't do any long-term damage. By the way, there is a problem with increasing nearsightedness. Like me, I'm nearsighted among children in Western countries and in East Asian countries. Scientists are not sure why, but several studies, not one, but several studies seem to suggest this factor, and they're not sure why, but several studies suggest it may be because kids nowadays are spending too much time indoors, maybe studying, and not playing outdoors in the sunlight. They're not getting enough outdoor time, not enough exposure to the sunlight. Scientists are not sure why that would affect the development of their eyes, but apparently it does. So if you have kids, I try to make sure my son gets to play outside as, enough, because I want him to have better eyes than I do. I had to get glasses when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade as a child. I don't want my son to do that. I make him play outside. It's good for other reasons too. So that might be why kids are not playing outside enough and getting enough exposure to sunlight. Why that is, why the sunlight affects the eyes, we don't know. That could be the reason. Moving on. Is fat worse than excessive sugar? We used to think that, and we're so concerned about fat, low-fat diets. Turns out that some of the studies showing fat to be evil and bad were funded by the sugar industry. The Sugar Institute, it's called. Yeah. We now know that sugar is worse than fat. You need some fat in your diet. Some fat is actually healthy for you. Not all fats. Some fats are healthy for you, at least in small or moderate amounts. Too much sugar is bad for you. Leads to all kinds of problems. Sodas, processed foods and stuff, that's bad for you. Next, drinking green tea. There was a study some years ago claiming that the news reports claimed that according to the study, drinking green tea can help you lose weight by increasing metabolism. So apparently there is a chemical in green tea that can help increase metabolism. But this was greatly exaggerated by the news media. To get the benefit of this particular chemical to increase your metabolism and lose weight, you would have to drink about 30 liters a day. Okay, I kind of like green tea. I am not going to drink 30 liters of green tea a day. No. Okay. I love coffee, but I'm not going to drink that much coffee a day. So this is greatly exaggerated. The benefit of this chemical is really, it's there, but it's not meaningful because it's there in such small amounts. It's not meaningful. Anytime you hear a particular diet or food or anything can help you lose weight, is it true? No. There's no magical cure for losing weight. If there were, we would all be using it and we would be slimming down, losing weight. Not true. If you're going to lose weight, well, there are some benefits of exercise. Sometimes those are exaggerated. I think there's some benefits of exercise, but just changing your diet long-term, permanently, changing the kind of foods you eat, that's how you lose weight. But it's not easy. For some people, there are emotional issues involved too when you're really overweight. So is a particular diet a good way to lose weight? No. Because again, you go on a diet for 6 months and after the diet, the weight comes back. Again, permanent change in your eating habits, in your diet, your long-term diet is necessary. Eating nuts is good for the brain. Well, if that were true, we'd all be eating nuts and we'd all be smarter. Again, this is maybe one study that was greatly exaggerated by the news media and misreported. One study. It was never really confirmed by other follow-up studies. There's no magical food that's going to make you smarter or make your brain work better. Other than coffee, we know coffee works. Yeah, you have to keep drinking it, but yeah, it does work. It makes your brain work better. Not everyone, but most people. It works for most of us. It works sort of like a certain brain chemical, and it tricks your brain into thinking that it's, the caffeine tricks your brain into thinking, oh, it's something else. It's a brain chemical. And it works. That's the only thing we know that really boosts mental power. Well, there's some other things that do also work, but they're not very healthy or safe. There's no magical food or anything, nuts, fish, or whatever, that's good for the brain. Yeah, those things are in general good for your health. Sure, eat them, but don't expect any particular brain benefits. Can we trust information we hear about health and medicine on social media? Or in general news media, especially commercial news media, commercial news websites? Can you trust them? Can you believe them? Maybe not. They don't know what they're talking about usually. The journalists don't know science. Most journalists don't know science. They don't know what they're talking about. The editors and people who oversee them, they don't know science usually. And sometimes they're driven by profit-making motives. They want cool, clickbaity titles. They want you to click on these cool titles. This is good for you. So, whom should we believe? Where can you find good information? What do you think? I'll leave it for you to think about, and we'll talk about that in the next video segment.